earlier this week, we talked about how Stephen A. Smith came on air on First Take and talked about how Lamar Jackson isn't getting, or the Ravens rather aren't getting their money's worth out of Lamar Jackson. Cited a couple fumbles this year. I won't say a couple, there's plenty, and we've addressed that issue as well. But Lamar Jackson's on pace for throwing for 4,500 yards, and Chris Canty came on First Take with no Stephen A. Smith today and has had a few comments. And I wanted to kind of share what he said and then also some rebuttals from Dan Orlovsky and company. So take a listen to this real quick from Chris Canty, who, by the way, was a former Raven too. So it's kind of interesting.
What's going on here?
Yeah. So here it is.
I can't believe you're putting me in the uncomfortable position
no,
of trying
Chris,
to
don't
defend
do it.
Stephen A.
Don't
Smith
do
for
it.
Monday, but I got to push back on this one. I do. Like Lamar Jackson cost his team an opportunity to win a game in Pittsburgh last week. Because although you're talking about those receivers and all of the drop passes, Lamar Jackson did get a gift from his special teams with a turnover on Gunnar Olszewski. Jamar Moon forced the fumble. They got the recovery. They're in the red zone, and this dude throws a pick.
Okay, so Lamar has to throw it,
but
catch
you don't know.
any mistakes.
Here's my point.
What do you want
Here's my
to
point.
do?
The Pittsburgh Steelers can't beat you if you don't make that mistake. They can't. You kick a field goal, you go up by points, you make that defense drive the length, you make that offense drive the length of the field. It's a different ball game. You're gifting the opportunities for the Steelers to beat you. The strip sack by TJ Watt. I know we don't want to put that on Lamar, but that's ball security. The quarterback has got to take care of it. It's not as if ball security hasn't been an issue in another loss they had at home to the Indianapolis Colts against Gardner Minshew-led Indy offense, and you lost that game in overtime. Lamar Jackson has got to be better. 8 total touchdowns to 8 total turnovers. That's not what you're looking for from your quarterback. You've got to be better in the National Football League, especially when they give you a $250 million contract.
All right, so there was that, and then there's this rebuttal from Dan Orlovsky and Kimberly Martin as well.
Dan Orlovsky is the quarterback apologist. All right, so Lamar's on track for 4,500 yards and 36 touchdowns. I'm not doing enough. I'm doing it 2 games missed by OBJ, 2 games missed by Rashad Bateman. Mark Andrews has missed time. My left tackle's missed time. I don't have any J.K. Dobbins. And we're sitting here saying they're not getting enough out of Lamar Jackson? First of all, Chris, you can't bring up the special teams and not point out that Pittsburgh also blocked a punt for points. Okay, you can't bring up the interception because it's an awful route by Odell Beckham, who I'm a massive fan of, but it's a bad route. The sack fumble, what do you want him to do? Block and throw?
No, I want him to hold the ball.
How can he hold the ball when he's throwing the ball?
So what you're saying is
he's literally in the process of throwing the football. He's literally doing this, Chris. He's doing this. What do you want me to do?
So he's throwing the football. If he's actively throwing the football, then how's it a fumble?
Because he got hit.
Oh, okay,
Why are you focusing? But here's my thing. There were so many mistakes by the wide receivers, the drops. And these were not passes where it was like, yo, how am I supposed to get that? They were in their hands and they let it go. They threw the hands off their body, and you're pointing to
I don't know how you do.
You're pointing to that. To Lamar's one mistake and not the 12.
No. It's two mistakes because it's 2 turnovers in the last 5 minutes of one possession.
Those 2 turnovers, but not the collective turnovers that we have over here. Like, come on. I know you're not a former quarterback, but come on.
And Kimberly Martin was on fire, by the way, too. She called Stephen A's take trash. And I'll just put this to bed. I'll just put this to bed from my perspective. Yes, and we addressed that Lamar Jackson made a couple mistakes in that game, but aside from the fumble at the last play of the game and that interception, which, by the way, Dan Orlovsky said that OBJ ran a terrible route, and I agree. And I had also made mention that I think at that point in the game, Lamar was just frustrated and just trying to force the ball in places that didn't belong. And so that's why those 2 mistakes were made. But you look at it, like, did Chris Canty actually watch this game? Because the rest of the team wasn't there. Lamar was there playing his ass off. Actually, probably had one of the best games of his career, at least throwing wise. He put the ball where it belonged, and it would be one thing if you said, "Oh well, he put throws that were catchable, but maybe not right in the breadbasket." But man, he was throwing dimes all game long, and it's unheard of for a team, even if it's a bad team, to drop 8 balls like that. So it was just. the focus is just not on Lamar in this game. It should be on the rest of the team. And this take by Chris and even Stephen A. Smith just is mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, it's Dan Orlovsky and Kimberly A. Martin, shout out to you guys. That was incredible. I also love that Kimberly kept referring to him as Christopher every time he'd make just a horrendous point. That was cracking
so condescending me up. And it's so great.
Yeah. And the worst part about it all is Chris Canty's going in on Lamar Jackson, and then the little picture they have of him in the corner is him wearing a Ravens uniform. It's like, dude, come on. I was like, it literally has you right there in our uniform. But like you said, Lamar Jackson, if you actually watch the game, was by himself. And it's not even like, oh, he had some plays where, he could have done something. There's really nothing differently he could have done. He threw, we put up that stat if all the balls were caught and there was no yards after catch. He throws over 350 yards and at least 3 touchdowns. Yeah. So for you to say that, are we getting enough out of Lamar? Are we getting enough out of, the Odell? Are we getting enough out of other guys? We want to talk about that, then we have a conversation. But
$18 million to OBJ, right?
Yeah. The one guy you can't, after that game, look at and go, are we getting enough from, is Lamar Jackson. So yeah. I agree with Kimberly. Monday was probably the worst day ever to bring that up because he did everything perfectly. He's the highest rated offensive player in the NFL.
Yeah.
He scored 10 points. Like, that's not on him. He did everything.
Yeah, it was the wrong example, right? It was the wrong example of what was happening. The reality, I think the part is because everyone does not look at as the Steelers of being a contending team, but they look at the Ravens with Lamar as being a contending team. So therefore you should win those games. So there's only knock. I don't agree with anything that Canty said on that, because Lamar balled out. For everything we said, he did everything that he possibly could, and you can't control the sack fumble. If they're saying there was a bad route, yes, the turnover in the red zone isn't good, but there's a lot more that goes on to it. But I will say this, in the division, you got to beat your divisional opponents. He does a great job against Cincy. The same can't be said with Lamar starting against Pittsburgh. And again, it's not just Lamar. I think the team in general has to figure out how to take care of Pittsburgh, because they have been a thorn in the side. And even Mike Tomlin's been out saying that you just got to stay in the fight because the Ravens don't play 4 quarters. That's what he's said in the past. And unfortunately right now, you can't fault him, because a couple of the Ravens' heartbreaking losses recently, last week being one, the one at the end of last year in Baltimore, were games that Pittsburgh was behind the whole game and they found a way to pull it out. But Lamar, it was not because of Lamar's efforts. Lamar was spectacular. And if Lamar plays like he did, the Ravens are going to win a ton of games.